There are portals that should never open. Even for Rick Sanchez, the smartest man in the multiverse, there are doors built not by science, but by madness. Doors sealed by the raw will of gods that feed on eternity itself. But genius has never respected caution. When Rick calibrates his portal gun for a frequency beyond known dimensions, Morty's protest is drowned out by the hum of unstable creation. The gate ignites, colors folding into impossible geometry. And for the first time, science tears through the veil of the Eye of Terror. Beyond it lies no alternate timeline, no quirky parallel Earth, only the nightmares of 10,000 years of war. In the eye, the stars themselves scream. Titans of chaos drift between the corpses of empires, and demons chant the name of their next offering. The multiverse is vast, but the warp is infinite, and Rick has just become its latest mistake. If you survive this journey through logic's graveyard, don't forget to stabilize your own reality matrix. Hit like, share the transmission with fellow travelers, and subscribe before the warp storms reach your feed. Every signal strengthens the beacon that keeps this story alive against the dark. The garage hummed with a sound that didn't belong to any machine born of Earth. It wasn't the steady pulse of an engine or the shriek of an overworked capacitor. It was alive, like the heartbeat of a newborn star trying to remember what it once was. The air shimmered, heavy with ozone and the faint scent of promethium oil. Rick Sanchez, slouched and half-drunk, stared at his latest creation through the glare of flickering halogen lights. The device before him was a portal generator, yes, but this was no ordinary tinker's toy. This was his declaration of war against mystery itself. "Morty, you ever think about what's beyond?" he muttered, voice brittle with exhaustion. Morty, clutching a data slate of equations that made no sense even when they were explained, blinked nervously. "Beyond what, Rick? Like alternate timelines or the place where the Fruppyland people go when they die?" His words trembled, echoing in the still air. Rick didn't answer at first. He flicked the edge of the stabilizer coil with a spanner, and it sang a high note, clear, metallic, mournful. "No, Morty, beyond everything, beyond the walls of math, beyond the physics that coddle your meat brain. I'm talking about the chaos at the foundation of existence." He lifted a flask, took a long swallow, and grinned. "We're opening a portal to the unknown, and I mean really unknown," Morty's voice broke. "You said that last time, Rick, when you accidentally opened a wormhole into a universe made of screaming hamsters." "Yeah," Rick said, wiping his mouth. "And this one's worse." The generator came alive, its rings rotating out of phase with reality, each one glimmering with impossible geometry. The oscillations began to sync with something, not within the lab, not within the universe, but beyond it. Light folded into darkness, then unfolded again into a color that didn't exist. The portal gun, wired into the stabilizer, emitted a shriek that felt more like thought than sound. Morty backed away, his stomach twisting with the kind of nausea that no dimension had medicine for. "Rick, that doesn't look right. That's not how portals look." Rick smirked, hair standing in the static glow. "Yeah, no kidding, Morty. That's how you know it's working." He adjusted the dial one last time. The readings went off scale. The garage trembled. Somewhere far beyond comprehension, a vast presence stirred. Something that had slept since the birth of stars, dreaming of war and worship. "Rick, stop. You're tuning into something alive," Morty shouted, his voice cracking. Rick turned toward him, eyes alight with the fever of discovery. "Everything's alive, Morty. Even the void, especially the void." And then the world tore open. The portal blossomed into existence, a wound in space glowing with unholy brilliance. It wasn't the familiar shimmer of interdimensional travel. It was wrong. The edges bled crimson and gold, as if light itself were screaming. Shapes moved inside it, vast and impossible, whispering in tongues that scraped against Morty's sanity like claws on glass. Rick, I can hear it," Morty whimpered. It's saying my name," Rick's grin faltered. For the first time, his arrogance cracked. The instruments melted, their readings collapsing into chaos. Every number screamed infinity. "That's not supposed to happen," he muttered. No one should be able to hear through a portal field. The whispers grew louder. They weren't words anymore. They were hunger. They were memory. They were promises whispered through blood and eternity. Morty's knees buckled. The portal's light crawled up the walls, devouring shadows. turning them into reflections of eyes that watched and judged and yearned. Rick lunged for the cut-off switch, but the console was already liquefying, metal running like wax. Sparks burst across the floor, the smell of burnt insulation mixed with the iron tang of something living. And then the portal reached back. Tendrils of light. No, not light, something older than light, lashed out and wrapped around Rick's arm. His portal gun flared, overloading in a cascade of white fire. Morty screamed as the floor gave way, reality bending inward like a collapsing lung. For a heartbeat that lasted forever, Rick saw what lay beyond. A sea of stars consumed by storms of madness. Gigantic silhouettes drifted in the void, worlds devouring themselves, gods screaming prayers into the flesh of creation. In the distance, a rift pulsed like an open eye. Staring directly at him, Rick Sanchez, scientist, nihilist, architect of infinity, blinked once and whispered, "Oh shh," then they were gone. The garage fell silent, save for the echo of collapsing air. A single droplet of green portal fluid hissed on the concrete floor. It glowed faintly, then dimmed, as though ashamed of what it had touched. They landed hard, not on ground, not on metal, not even on something that could be called real. Morty's body hit a surface that flexed like a membrane, slick with warmth and the faint pulse of life. He gagged as his hands sank half an inch into the material and came away wet. The air tasted like copper and incense, thick and vibrating with a frequency that made his bones hum. Rick groaned beside him, half buried in a puddle of something luminous. Okay, that's new. The atmosphere's alive, he spat, the saliva hanging in the air longer than it should before drifting upward. The sky was a wound, red and black, folding into itself, every cloud shaped like something trying to crawl free. Or Rick. Where are we? Morty's voice cracked, barely holding itself together. Rick didn't answer immediately. He was staring at his portal gun, or what was left of it. The casing twisted, glass bleeding out smoke that didn't obey gravity. We're not anywhere good, Morty. The coordinates don't map. This isn't a universe. It's a living equation that hates being solved. He chuckled weakly. Ha! The math's angry. A distant sound rolled across the horizon. Not thunder, but something deeper, the slow groan of tectonic insanity. The ground beneath them convulsed, like something vast shifting in its sleep. Far off, mountains pulsed with veins of gold and scarlet light, beating in time with the sky. Morty clutched his ears. It's whispering again, Rick. I can hear it inside my head. Rick looked at him sharply. Ignore it, Morty. It's not for you. But it knows my name. Yeah, Rick said grimly. That's the problem. They began to walk, though walking felt meaningless here. Distance didn't behave. The landscape folded in on itself, repeating, bleeding into new forms. An endless tessellation of nightmares pretending to be topography. Morty's eyes kept catching things that weren't there a moment before. Silhouettes of robed giants, towers made of bone, rivers that murmured prayers in binary. Every breath felt like it cost something. Rick's face was pale beneath the grime. He kept glancing at the horizon, scanning for patterns, muttering calculations that dissolved before he could finish them. The warp. It's the warp, Morty. Has to be. We tore through the membrane of causality straight into a psychic singularity. The what? The Eye of Terror, kid. Congratulations. You're the first cartoon to visit the Imperium's worst acid trip. Morty blinked, eyes wide and trembling. The Warhammer thing? That's real. Rick snorted. Everything's real somewhere, Morty. That's the joke. You think fiction's fake. It's just lower probability physics. He stepped over a ridge of ribbed stone that might have been a fossilized lung. Now shut up and help me find something stable before your brain melts out of your nose. As they moved deeper into the crimson haze, the sky began to churn faster. Shapes formed and unformed above them. Wings, claws, crowns of flame. Morty kept flinching at whispers that pressed against his skull like hot fingers. They weren't voices exactly, more like thoughts made audible. One of them sounded almost kind, almost familiar. Morty, you don't belong to him. He froze. Rick, did you hear that? Rick was kneeling beside a jagged monolith etched with a double-headed eagle. Ancient, corroded, half melted. Yeah, it's just the warp trying to friend request your soul. Ignore it, but it sounded like Mom. Rick looked up slowly, his expression turning hard. That's exactly how it gets you. The monolith vibrated beneath his hand, humming with faint psychic residue. It wasn't just a stone, it was a marker, a remnant of some long-lost Imperial outpost swallowed by the eye ages ago. Symbols glowed faintly beneath the grime. Ave Imperator. Terror remembers. Rick frowned. Human inscription. Which means there was once a way out. Before Morty could reply, the ground cracked open beneath the monolith. From within came a sound like breathing. Long, ragged, wet. A hand emerged. Mechanical and organic all at once. Wires wrapped around veins. Armor fused with flesh. It clawed its way upward, dragging with it a figure once human, now something else entirely. A servitor, half machine, half corpse, stared at them with dead optics flickering amber. Data, corruption, it rasped. Request, identification. Morty stumbled back, gagging. Rick, it's a zombie robot. Rick raised his portal gun fragment, its barrel flickering weakly. No, Morty, it's worse. It's a recording device. The servitor twitched, jaw clattering. The eye opens. The gods! Awake! Its head snapped sideways with a wet crack. Warning, demonic activity. Then it froze. The air around it darkened. Shadows bent inward, forming a shape. Tall, fluid, and burning with indigo fire. The servitor disintegrated to ash. Morty screamed. Rick didn't move. Don't react, Rick whispered. It can smell thought. The thing loomed above them, a silhouette woven from lies. A demon, tall and serpentine, its eyes like shifting constellations. Its voice was a song sung backward. Traveler of machines. You do not belong, Rick swallowed, forcing his tone flat. Neither do you. Guess we're neighbors now. The daemon tilted its head. You carry the scent of forbidden knowledge. The changer of ways is curious. Rick smirked, though his hands trembled. Tell your boss to get in line. The demon smiled, if the curling distortion on its not face could be called that, and dissolved into mist. The whispers fell silent. Rick exhaled, slow and shaky. Morty, we're officially screwed. Morty's lip quivered. What was that? Rick wiped sweat from his brow. An invitation. He turned toward the horizon. The mountains had changed again. This time, something vast glimmered between them. A fortress of impossible angles, floating upside down in a sea of fire. It pulsed with runes of change, like a heart beating in time with destiny. Rick squared his shoulders. Come on, Morty. If anyone knows how to get us out of hell, it's the guy running it. They walked for what felt like hours, though time had lost all meaning the moment they stepped into this nightmare. The ground was slick with light, the air heavy with the taste of old prayers. Every step echoed twice, once in sound, once in thought. Morty clung to the edge of reason, trying to ignore the whispers that spoke through the static of his mind. Rick moved ahead, silent, his silhouette framed by the slow flicker of lightning that crawled across the sky like veins of dying gods. Rick, my legs don't feel right, Morty muttered. It's like they remember walking somewhere else before I even move them. Rick didn't turn. Temporal bleed. Don't worry, your nervous system's just having an identity crisis. That doesn't sound like something not to worry about. Yeah, well, you're still talking, so you're fine. Ahead, the floating fortress grew clearer. A labyrinth of impossible geometry, shifting towers that reassembled themselves every few seconds. Its gates were massive and alive, carved from something that looked disturbingly like bone. Chains of light hung from its spires, each one holding a captive world or memory, glimmering faintly as they pulsed in rhythm with some hidden heart. As they approached, the ground changed texture, no longer flesh, but dust made of dreams ground to powder. Footsteps left impressions that faded as soon as Morty blinked. When they reached the gates, they opened not with sound, but with understanding. The doors recognized thought and yielded. Rick, I don't think we should go in there, Morty said, voice trembling. Rick glanced back, face unreadable. You think I want to, Morty? You think this is on my bucket list? We're not sightseeing. We're finding an exit vector before this place figures out what we are. Inside, corridors spiraled upward and downward at once, each wall alive with flowing script that shifted between symbols and words, names, histories, prophecies. Morty tried not to read, but the letters crawled across his eyes anyway. He saw glimpses of other worlds, other Ricks dying under alien suns, Mortys bound to thrones of glass. Rick's jaw tightened. Ignore it. The warp feeds on attention. The moment you believe what it shows, it becomes true. But it's showing you, Rick. Yeah, he said quietly. It likes me. At the end of the hall, they reached a chamber vast enough to hold a civilization. Floating in its center was a figure, cloaked in 1,000 feathers that shimmered like galaxies. Each one an idea given form. Its eyes burned blue, its beak curved like a scholar's quill. Morty froze. Rick. That's not a person. Rick took a slow breath. No, that's an emissary. Probably of him. The air around them bent, folding thought into sound. You tear open the skein and stumble through, child of reason, the voice said, echoing both in their ears and inside their skulls. You reach for the forbidden flame and ask why it burns. Rick straightened, defiance burning in his eyes. You must be one of Tsinch's middle managers. Tell your boss I'm not here to worship. I'm here to fix a mistake. The being's feathers rippled, each motion rewriting the air. There are no mistakes, only transformations. You have crossed the threshold between thought and will. You are a question given flesh. Yeah, save the fortune cookie monologue. Can you open a way back to my dimension or not? The chamber darkened. The warp does not give. It trades. Knowledge for sacrifice. Truth for sanity, Rick sneered. I've traded both 1,000 times over. The being's eyes brightened. Then you are already halfway mine. Morty stumbled backward, panic clawing at his chest. Rick, let's go, please, I don't like this. But Rick didn't move. His hand hovered near the broken remains of his portal gun. You think you can bargain with me? You think I'm another mortal waiting to be your puppet? The feathers around the being flared, burning with color that wasn't color. All mortals are puppets. Some simply learn to pull their own strings. For the first time, Rick faltered. His bravado wavered, not from fear, but from fascination. The being was speaking in the language of equations, the kind that existed before physics, before time. His mind raced, translating symbols into meaning, finding patterns in chaos. Morty grabbed his arm. Rick, you're listening to it. Rick blinked. His pupils had become small rings of blue fire. Morty, it's showing me everything. The way the warp bends thought into energy. The way emotion defines gravity. It's beautiful. No, Rick. It's lying. It's using you. The being smiled, not cruelly, but with the infinite patience of a scholar dissecting an insect. Every truth feels like a lie to those unprepared to bear it. Rick stepped closer. Tell me what you want. Only this. Let your mind open. Let me teach you. The light swelled until it filled the chamber, swallowing everything in radiance and screaming thought. Morty shouted Rick's name, but the sound disintegrated. The world folded, and for an instant, Rick saw not the warp, but the architecture behind it, the machinery of souls. Then it was gone. Silence fell. The chamber dimmed. Rick was on his knees, smoke rising from his skin. Morty knelt beside him, shaking. Rick, are you okay? Rick coughed, eyes still glowing faintly blue. Morty, we're in deeper than I thought. The warp isn't a place. It's a mirror, and it just looked back. He stared into the void beyond the chamber doors, where shapes began to stir. Legions of shadows, drawn by the scent of curiosity. We need to get out of here, now. Morty glanced around, terrified. Which way? Rick didn't answer. He pointed the broken portal gun at the air, where reality rippled like heat. Whichever way hurts less, the air screamed, and the world shattered again. They fell through the wound in space like two sparks dragged into a storm. There was no up, no down, no direction at all, only momentum and terror, wrapped in color that refused to stay still. Morty screamed until his voice gave out, and even then the sound hung around him, looping back in warped echoes that spoke his name like a prayer. Rick clenched his jaw, trying to stabilize the broken portal gun as they tumbled through a tunnel of light that bled thought. His mind fought to impose reason, but logic was just another victim here. When they hit the ground, it wasn't ground. It was the skin of something vast and dreaming. It quivered under their weight, pulsing with faint light. Above them stretched a sky that writhed like liquid mercury, stars forming and dying within seconds. It smelled of burning incense, rot, and the sweetness of decay. Morty gagged, pressing a hand to his mouth. Rick, are we back? He croaked. Rick pushed himself up, his coat hanging in tatters, eyes bloodshot and distant. If by back you mean a plane of existence where gravity pretends to make sense, then no, Morty. We're still inside the eye. Just deeper. Morty's breathing hitched. Deeper? I thought that was like the hell part already. Rick stood, brushing slime from his hands. Hell's for amateurs. This is where thought itself goes to die. Something shrieked in the distance, a long metallic cry that made the air ripple. The surface beneath them convulsed, forming ridges like a living landscape rearranging itself to watch. Towers of bone rose from the horizon, shifting into cathedrals before dissolving again into dust. The ground around them sprouted eyes, watching without blinking. Morty stumbled backward, trembling. "Rick, this place, it's alive. The whole planet's alive." Rick glanced around, his expression unreadable. "Not a planet. A psycho-reactive consciousness field. Everything here has meaning, Morty. Every rock, every sound, every breath you take, it all responds to thought." Morty's panic spiked. "So if I'm scared, it gets worse?" Rick nodded grimly. "Yeah, so stop being scared." "Rick, that's not how emotions work." "Then learn faster." The sky darkened suddenly, as if some colossal presence had leaned close enough to blot out the light. Shadows twisted into forms that almost made sense. Faces, claws, cities built from screams. The world began to hum, deep and resonant, vibrating inside their bones. Morty covered his ears, but the sound wasn't in the air. It was inside him. Rick's hand went to his belt, pulling out a small, half-melted device that flickered weakly. "Psi-field disruptor. Might buy us a few minutes." He pressed the trigger. A faint blue pulse rippled outward, and the hum subsided, replaced by a chorus of distant whispers. But the whispers weren't fading. They were getting closer. Morty turned in circles, his voice breaking. "Rick, someone's talking to me. I can hear them. They're saying..." "I know," Rick said flatly. "Ignore it." "They're saying you brought me here on purpose." Rick froze for a fraction of a second, then looked away. "It's lying. Are you sure?" Morty's voice wavered. "Because it sounds like you." Rick's tone hardened. "Morty, it's not me. It's the warp using my voice. You think I'd waste my time haunting you when I can do that while you're alive?" The words didn't comfort him. The voices grew clearer, distinct now. Hundreds, maybe thousands, each whispering through the air like moth wings. They spoke in half-truths, in laughter, in tears. Some sounded like people Morty knew. Others sounded like no one who'd ever lived. They began to take shape. Figures stepped out of the mist, people stitched together from memories and mistakes. Summer's face smiling wrong, Beth's eyes hollow and golden. A dozen versions of Rick, each one more broken than the last. They surrounded the pair, their mouths moving in silent mockery. Morty fell to his knees. "Rick, I can't tell what's real anymore." Rick grabbed him by the collar and forced him upright. "Then stop trying. You don't survive the warp by being right, Morty. You survive by being stubborn." He fired the disruptor again. This time, the pulse shattered the illusions, tearing them into ribbons of light that scattered into the air. The silence that followed was worse. Then the ground began to scream. It wasn't noise, it was emotion. Agony turned to sound. The entire landscape convulsed, howling like a wounded god. The surface cracked open, spilling rivers of molten gold and black ichor. From within, massive shapes rose. Towering figures made of armor and nightmare, their bodies carved with runes that burned with the colors of madness. Rick's face went pale. "Ah, crap! Demons! Real ones!" Morty stumbled backward, his voice gone to a whisper. "Rick, what do we do?" Rick holstered the disruptor, his voice steady, but his eyes wide. "We run. And if that doesn't work, we lie really well." The nearest demon turned its burning eyes toward them and spoke in a voice like collapsing stars. "You cannot run from what you already are." Rick swallowed, raising what remained of his portal gun. "Want a bet?" He pulled the trigger. The world inverted. Light, darkness, and matter tangled in one instant of screaming motion. For a moment, Morty saw everything. The demon's endless face, the sea of souls writhing beneath reality, and the flicker of his own reflection, eyes glowing faintly blue. Then the light consumed them. They fell from the light into silence so complete it hurt. No echo, no hum, not even breath at first. Just stillness, vast and crushing. The ground beneath them was glass, black, smooth and rippling faintly, as if water hid beneath. Morty pressed his palms to his ears, but the silence pressed back harder. It wasn't the absence of sound. It was sound waiting to happen. Rick sat up first, coughing, his eyes bloodshot from whatever psychic radiation now clung to them. The portal gun smoked beside him, a ruin of melted circuits and warped metal. "Okay," he rasped. "On the bright side, we're not vaporized. On the downside..." We're probably in the brainstem of some god. Morty didn't laugh. He was staring at his reflection in the black glass. It didn't match him. His reflection breathed when he didn't. Its eyes glowed faintly red, its mouth whispering soundlessly. Rick, something's wrong with the mirror. Rick turned, and for a moment he said nothing. The reflections around them were moving independently. Hundreds of Mortys and Ricks flickering through impossible sequences of choices. Each one dying, mutating, transforming. The warp's version of probability, he muttered. Every potential you've ever had is alive here, screaming to be real. As if on cue, the silence broke. A low vibration ran through the glass, rising in pitch until it became a keening wail that filled the air like metal being stretched across a sun. Morty clutched his head and fell to his knees, tears running down his face. The sound wasn't in his ears. It was inside his skull, clawing at the walls of his thoughts. Rick pulled a small sphere from his pocket, cracked it open, and shoved it into the ground. A dome of blue static formed around them. The screaming dulled, though it didn't stop. Sound in the warp isn't vibration, Morty. It's thought density. This place is the echo of 1 billion dying minds, all feeding on each other. Morty whimpered. They're talking, Rick. I can understand them. Rick's head snapped around. Don't listen. I can't help it. They're saying things. Things about me, about what I did in other worlds. Rick crouched down, grabbing his shoulders. Those aren't you, Morty. They're echoes. Ghosts of choices you never made. They'll eat you alive if you start believing they matter. But the look on Morty's face said he already did. He turned toward one of the reflections, one where he stood taller, older, holding something glowing in his hands. The other, Morty smiled, lips moving in perfect silence. The real Morty mouthed the words back, without knowing why. Rick slammed his fist against the glass. The image shattered into darkness, but a wave of distortion rippled outward. The air thickened. The ground bulged upward like the surface of a living sea. Oh, great, Rick muttered. You just poked a psychic hornet's nest. Shapes began to rise from the darkness below. Humanoid at first, then something else entirely. Limbs elongated, twisting into blades of bone. Mouths formed along torsos. Dozens of voices layered into a single discordant chant. Morty screamed. Rick, what are those things? Rick's voice went cold. Demons of the screaming choir. They eat identity. The creatures surged forward, moving like smoke and flesh at once. Rick fired the broken portal gun. It sparked, spat green fire, then exploded in his hand. He cursed, shaking off the molten metal. Perfect! We're improvising now. He pulled a small vial from his coat and hurled it into the air. The liquid inside caught light, expanding into a sudden burst of holy flame. A pale imitation of imperial pyrite, something Rick had scavenged from an ancient manufactorum long ago. The demons recoiled, their forms flickering like shadows under a dying sun. Rick grabbed Morty's wrist. Run! They sprinted across the glass plane, the world deforming around them. Every step sent cracks through the ground, revealing rivers of molten memory beneath. The screams rose again, louder, closer. The demons followed, their shapes multiplying, feeding on fear. Rick, they're not stopping. They don't stop. They hunger. Just keep moving. Ahead, the horizon split open, a vast chasm glowing with impossible color. At its edge stood a single figure, tall and armored, its form shrouded in gold light that fought against the madness. Rick slowed, pulling Morty behind a jagged shard of crystal. That's new, he whispered. The figure turned. Its face was hidden behind a broken helm, marked by the twin-headed Aquila. The armor was scorched, its insignia half melted, but unmistakable. A warrior of the Adeptus Custodes. Rick frowned. Huh. A fragment of the Emperor's personal guard, trapped here, maybe for centuries. The custodian raised his halberd and spoke, his voice both human and something more. Who dares walk the screaming veil? Morty trembled. Rick, is he? Is he one of the good guys? Rick smirked faintly. Kid, in the 41st millennium, nobody's the good guy. The demons howled behind them. The custodian turned toward the sound, his weapon blazing with psychic fire. Stay behind me, strangers, he commanded. You carry the taint of the warp, but you yet breathe. That means you may still be saved. Rick raised an eyebrow. Saved, huh? Buddy, I'm the guy who caused this mess. You sure you want to be standing that close? The custodian didn't answer. He charged. The halberd cut through the air, slicing demons like parchment. Each strike left trails of burning gold. Rick stared for a heartbeat too long, his scientist's mind devouring every detail of this impossible weapon. Morty grabbed his sleeve. "Rick! We gotta go while he's buying us time!" Rick hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, you're right." As they ran past the battle, the screams reached a crescendo, an orchestra of agony, triumph, and ecstasy. The air thickened with power, bending light and time. Rick glanced back once. The custodian was surrounded now, his armor cracking, his fire dimming. Yet even as he fell, his voice thundered through the storm. "Tell Terra, we held the line." The world shattered again. Rick and Morty were hurled through the explosion of light, tumbling end over end into another realm of impossible color. And somewhere behind them, the demons laughed. They tumbled through light that had weight, through gravity that hummed like a dying star. When the chaos finally spat them out, they fell into a forest that wasn't a forest at all. The trees were pillars of bone and bronze, each one carved with screaming faces that whispered prayers in binary. A sky of molten dusk hung low, dragging shadows across the landscape like bleeding ink. Rick hit the ground first, coughing up smoke. Morty landed beside him with a grunt, his hands trembling uncontrollably. Everything around them pulsed with a rhythm that wasn't sound but heartbeat, something colossal, far beneath the surface, alive and aware. "Rick, I don't think this place likes us," Morty said softly. Rick spat a wad of blood and laughed under his breath. "That's mutual, Morty. Don't take it personally." They stood in silence for a long moment. The air shimmered with heat, or perhaps memory, and the horizon shifted as if distance were a lie. Morty wiped his nose. The blood was black. "Rick, what's happening to me?" Rick didn't answer right away. His eyes were scanning the forest, reading invisible equations that hung in the air like faint holograms. "Warp corruption. You're holding too much reality inside a place that hates it. You're leaking sanity." Morty's voice cracked. "Leaking? Rick, that's not supposed to happen to people." Rick shrugged. "People aren't supposed to be here. You think the laws of nature stop at the border and wave your passport. Welcome to the Imperium, Morty. Every thought you have is an act of violence." Something moved between the pillars. A ripple of darkness shaped like a man, but wrong, too tall, its joints bending the wrong way. It paused, watching them. Morty froze. "Rick, there's something out there." Rick pulled a small device from his belt and scanned the area. The display flickered with nonsense. "Spectral anomaly. Might be another demon, might be a psychic echo. Either way, keep your mouth shut." The shadow stepped into the open. It wore fragments of armor etched with sigils of the 8-pointed star. Its face was hidden behind a mask that resembled a human's skull stretched too thin. When it spoke, the voice came from inside their minds. Mortals, strangers, fractured minds drifting through the warp. "Tell me, who guides you?" Rick raised an eyebrow. "I guide myself. Always have." The creature tilted its head. "Arrogance, a scent beloved by my master. He watches you, child of intellect." Morty clutched Rick's sleeve. "Rick, don't talk to it." Rick smirked. "Relax, Morty. I've argued with worse." The creature's form flickered, becoming many things at once: a priest, a child, a flame, a storm. "Your science is a hymn of denial," it said. "Yet you stand within divinity itself. Does your logic comfort you now that you can taste it?" Rick's grin faltered. "You call this divinity? Feels more like a bad acid trip." The thing leaned closer, its mask splitting to reveal endless eyes. The difference is one of scale. For a moment, Rick saw everything: the flow of souls, the raw current of emotion that shaped reality, the architecture of fear. It was beautiful and horrifying in equal measure, and for a second, his mind wanted to kneel. Morty screamed his name, and the vision broke. Rick stumbled backward, gasping. Okay, That's enough theology for one lifetime. The creature smiled, an expression made of thought. He knows your name, scientist. The architect of fate stirs. He whispers, "You are useful." Rick wiped sweat from his forehead. "Tell your boss he can keep his curiosity. I don't do internships." The demon's laughter was soft, like a blade sliding through silk. "You already have." Then it vanished. The air folded around its absence, leaving only silence and a faint scent of ozone. Morty looked around wildly. "Rick, what did it mean? What did it do to you?" Rick didn't answer. His hand was trembling, the faint blue glow in his eyes returning like a fever. "It showed me patterns, Morty. Connections. How reality threads itself through thought. It's like the whole universe is a circuit and the warp is the current." Morty shook his head. "Rick, that's not you talking. That's it. It's changing you." Rick turned sharply. "Don't tell me what's changing me. I've been rewritten more times than your DNA's been copied." He paused, voice softening. "But you're not wrong. Something's leaking through." The pillars began to vibrate. The faces carved into them opened their mouths, exhaling mist that glowed faintly blue, the same color as Rick's eyes. The forest hummed, a low chant rising from nowhere. Knowledge for the clever, power for the brave. Rick's breath caught. "He's offering me a deal." Morty stepped in front of him. "Rick, no. Every time you make a deal, something awful happens." Rick's smirk returned, brittle and tired. "Morty, every time I don't, something worse happens." The chant grew louder. The mist swirled around them, forming spirals of light that coiled toward Rick's hands. The broken remains of his portal gun floated upward, pieces aligning themselves with impossible precision. Circuits reformed, metal twisted, energy flowed from nowhere. Morty reached for him. "Rick, stop! You don't know what it's doing." Rick's voice was distant now, eyes wide with wonder. "I know exactly what it's doing. It's listening." The last shard of the gun snapped into place, glowing with runes not of science, but sorcery. The chant stopped, the air stilled. Rick looked down at his creation, a portal gun reborn, alive with chaotic power. He whispered, "Tzeentch just made me an offer I can't refuse." Morty's voice cracked. "What did you give him in return?" Rick looked at him then, the light fading from his eyes, replaced by something darker. "I think we'll find out." Behind them, the pillars began to shift again, slowly bending toward the pair like titans waking from a long sleep. And from far away, beyond sight, a god of change smiled. The air in the bone forest shifted, its temperature dropping until breath turned to frost. The mist that had rebuilt Rick's portal gun lingered around them like thought given form, whispering in languages that weren't sound. Morty could feel them, each syllable pressing against his skin like fingertips made of smoke. The pillars loomed, their carved faces now silent, watching, waiting. Rick stood completely still, studying the weapon in his hand. It pulsed with light that wasn't mechanical, alive, sentient, aware. The barrel shimmered with runes that crawled like veins, threading themselves deeper into the metal. For a moment, the device looked back at him. "Rick," Morty whispered. What? What did you do?" Rick exhaled slowly, his voice detached and analytical, like a scientist dissecting his own failure. "I didn't build this. I just helped it remember what it was." Morty shook his head violently. "That's not science, Rick. That's magic." Rick finally turned toward him, the faintest glimmer of something strange, almost awe, burning behind his usual cynicism. "Magic's just physics that refuses to show its work, Morty. Same rules, different syntax." The ground trembled as something enormous stirred beyond the horizon. The air thickened with color and heat. Every carved face in the forest opened, its mouth in unison, and whispered one word that wasn't a word, but a concept that clawed at their minds. Change. Rick grimaced. "Yeah, he's listening." Morty's eyes went wide. "He? Who's listening?" Before Rick could answer, the world itself bent. The forest melted into liquid light, the sky split into spirals of impossible geometry, and a shadow descended that wasn't a shadow at all. It had no form, only suggestion. A shifting mirage of bird, flame, and storm, always changing, never solid. The air around them screamed as the thing spoke without sound. "You bear my mark, mortal of machines." Rick's expression didn't falter. "So you're the big brain behind all this. Tzeentch, right? The god of knowing too much and caring too little?" 1,000 voices laughed at once, like glass shattering underwater. "You speak as one who understands the cost of knowledge. You twist cause and effect like a craftsman. You are mine already." Rick raised an eyebrow. "Sorry, but I'm not much of a joiner. Clubs, religions, pantheons, hard pass." The shifting light coiled closer, forming an outline vaguely human, its skin made of constellations. "You deny me, yet you use my gift. You forge portals between fates. You steal from gods and call it science. You are my echo-made flesh." Rick's smirk flickered. "Oh, cute speech. You should put that on a motivational poster." Morty trembled behind him, unable to move. His heart felt like it was being rewritten. The god's attention was a pressure, an intellect vast and endless, pressing into his thoughts until he could barely remember his own name. Rick sensed it. "Hey, eyes off the kid! He is your tether, your witness. Through him you are bound to consequence. I will not harm him. I will use him," Morty whimpered. "Rick, it's in my head. I can hear it." Rick lifted the gun, its runes blazing like blue fire. "Back off, birdbrain, or I'll teach you what entropy feels like when it cries." The god's laughter rolled through reality itself, bending gravity, turning air to glass. "You would threaten infinity with a toy of your own making. You amuse me. But very well, you wish to bargain, so we shall." Rick froze. He hadn't spoken the word bargain, but it hung in the air anyway, pulled straight from the folds of his intent. The god's presence leaned closer, tendrils of thought snaking through his mind. "I offer you truth, mortal, the structure of fate, the hidden logic beneath chaos. I will show you how to build not portals between worlds, but between destinies." Rick swallowed. "And in return?" The voice was softer now, seductive. "Only what you have always given freely. Curiosity, defiance, your need to understand." Morty grabbed Rick's arm. "Rick, don't do this! Every time you say yes to something like this, bad things happen. Look around. This isn't just another universe, it's evil." Rick looked down at him, and for the first time, there was conflict in his eyes. "Evil's just physics with bad PR, Morty. And maybe, just maybe, this is the only way home." The air trembled. The god's laughter returned, but this time it was quieter, closer. "Yes, say it, mortal. Accept the truth of change. Let your logic melt and reform. Let me make you whole." Rick raised the portal gun slowly, the runes burning brighter. The world around them vibrated, reality holding its breath. For a moment, Morty saw both futures at once. One where Rick refused and they died screaming, another where he accepted and became something unrecognizable. Rick whispered, "All right, Featherhead, let's deal." The warp erupted in color. The explosion of light didn't blind, it revealed. Every atom around them unfolded into its true form, a lattice of thought and possibility intertwined. Morty screamed as he was torn out of his body, not in death, but in comprehension. For an instant, he was everything and nothing. Dust, laughter, the taste of ozone on a dying star. Then it ended, and he was kneeling again, trembling, whole only by the mercy of something vast. Rick stood before the shifting entity of flame and feathers, unburned but changed. The runes on his arms glowed faintly, pulsing in time with the rhythm of the god's voice. He looked both ancient and young. His mind stretched thin across realities, holding too much truth to fit inside a single man. Tzeentch, or the thing that represented it, watched him with infinite amusement. "You see now, do you not? The weave beneath all things. The pattern that even gods must obey," Rick laughed weakly. "Pattern? You mean the cosmic spaghetti code that keeps everything from imploding?" "Yeah, I saw it. And guess what? It's buggy as hell." The laughter that followed wasn't sound. It was the feeling of a library on fire, pages screaming as they turn to ash. "You speak with contempt, yet your eyes burn with wonder. You want this. You always have." Rick turned the portal gun in his hand, inspecting it. The runes moved when he blinked, whispering formulas that translated emotion into geometry. "I want answers. he said quietly. Not faith, not obedience, just understanding. The god's shape shifted again. Now a robed figure made of starlight. Now a serpent of words. Now a mirror showing Rick's own face, smiling cruelly. Then understand this. Every question births its own prison. You seek truth, but truth is a cage made of your own mind. Morty stumbled forward, his voice hoarse. Rick, stop talking to it. You're not you anymore. Look at your eyes. Rick glanced at him, and Morty froze. The eyes staring back were not the chaotic blue of portal energy, but something deeper, like twin galaxies folding in on themselves. Rick's voice was low, calm, disturbingly steady. I'm fine, Morty. I'm seeing. This thing isn't a god. It's a physicist with better branding. Tzeentch's laughter rolled like thunder through glass. And yet you kneel all the same. I'm not kneeling, Rick said, though his body trembled under the weight of its presence. I'm negotiating. The light around them condensed into 1,000 floating symbols. They weren't written words, but living equations. Each one a law of the universe, stripped bare and rewritten. The air smelled of copper and burnt incense. Rick reached out, touching one. It seared his fingertips, carving knowledge directly into his neurons. Morty's scream broke the silence. Rick, stop! Rick turned sharply, and for a moment, Morty didn't see his grandfather. He saw a figure cloaked in data and light, a man standing at the intersection of science and sorcery, his veins glowing with the circuitry of creation. Then Rick blinked, and it was gone. Relax, Morty, he muttered. I'm not possessed. I'm just upgraded. The god's voice coiled around them again, almost tender. A gift then, the first of many. With this, you may reshape your universe, repair what was broken, rewrite what was lost. Rick's expression darkened. You think I don't know the cost? There's always a catch. There is no catch. There's only change. Rick barked a laugh, bitter and hollow. Yeah, that's what every addict says before the third dose kills him. He aimed the portal gun toward the horizon. It hummed like a living heart. I take your power. I take your knowledge, but you don't get me. You don't get him, Morty's voice shook. Rick, we need to go, please. Whatever you're doing, it's not worth it. Rick's hand tightened on the trigger. You might be right, Morty, but I'm way past the point of worth it. The portal gun fired, not green but violet, shot through with streaks of gold and blue. The space in front of them split open, revealing a void filled with motion, thought, and song. For the first time since entering the Eye of Terror, the light looked clean. Tzeentch's laughter echoed faintly, fading like a dream. Go then, mortal. Carry my spark, spread my chaos. We shall speak again when your universe begins to burn. Rick smirked. Yeah, send me the bill. He grabbed Morty's arm and dove through the portal. The forest, the faces, the god, all vanished in a rush of light. For a moment, they fell through silence again. But this time it was different. The void hummed softly, and the stars they passed didn't scream. They whispered, "Welcome back." Then gravity returned. They slammed into metal flooring, the clang echoing down vast corridors lined with rusted pipes and broken aquillas. Morty groaned, clutching his ribs. Where are we now? Rick looked around, scanning the markings on the wall. Ancient Gothic script smeared with age. Imperial manufacturing. Judging by the decay, probably somewhere near the Cadian sector. Morty blinked. You mean we're still in the Warhammer universe? Rick holstered the gun, now dim and quiet. Yeah, he said, but not for long. He looked down at his trembling hands. The veins beneath his skin glowed faintly, the color of warp fire. And somewhere deep in the metal around them, the machines began to whisper his name. The manufactorum was a cathedral of rust. Miles of corroded steel arched into darkness, pierced by beams of faint blue light that leaked from dying lumen fixtures. The air was thick with dust and ash, and beneath it, something worse. A scent like old prayers burned too long on the altar. Every step echoed, swallowed by the vast haunted machinery that slept around them. Morty clung close to Rick, eyes darting to the shadows between the machines. Rick, this place gives me the creeps. It's like a factory built to build nightmares. Rick didn't answer right away. His gaze swept the cavernous hall, the glow beneath his skin faint but pulsing. The runes that Tzeentch had branded into him, though he'd never admit they were a brand, flared with subtle rhythm, guiding his focus toward the center of the room. There, beneath the scaffolds and catwalks, lay a colossal engine, dormant and half consumed by rust. Its shape was wrong, asymmetrical. Its design both mechanical and biological. A fusion of gears and sinew. Yeah, Rick muttered. It's a forged relic, pre-heresy if I had to guess. Probably used to pump out titans before the whole galaxy went insane. Morty frowned. Pre-heresy? That means it's like 10,000 years old. 11,000, Rick corrected automatically. Give or take a few centuries of bureaucratic paperwork. He hopped down onto the nearest platform, scanning the machine. Still humming though, barely, which means there's still power, and maybe, if we're lucky, a way out of this nightmare. Morty followed hesitantly. You really think this thing can open a portal? Rick crouched beside a cracked control terminal. Morty, this thing probably built gods by accident back in its prime. Compared to that, a portal's a toaster oven. He pried open the console and the whole manufactorum seemed to sigh. Somewhere deep within, the machinery stirred. Pistons twitched. Tubes exhaled stale air that smelled faintly of burnt oil and embalmed flesh. Lights flickered on, one by one, stretching into the darkness like a chain of awakening eyes. Morty shuddered. Rick, I think you woke it up. Good, Rick said, grinning faintly. Means it's listening. The console came alive, its screen a dim, flickering blue. Ancient Gothic text scrolled across it, unreadable at first, then shifting, letter by letter, into a language Rick could understand. Access denied. Machine spirit offline. Sacred rites required. Rick snorted. Figures. They built sentient computers and made them religious. He cracked his knuckles. All right, let's see how this tin saint likes a little divine interference. He placed his palm against the console. The runes in his skin flared, and the air hummed with psychic static. Symbols appeared on the screen. Unfamiliar, glowing, and alive. The terminal groaned, sparks leaping across the metal as the machine spirit woke from its millennia-long sleep. Identity, unknown. Energy source, non-standard. Query, who disturbs my sanctuary? Rick's voice dropped to a whisper. Rick Sanchez. Dimension C-137. Genius, outlaw, occasional heretic. There was a pause. Then the screen flickered again. Recognition. Denied. Signature. Anomalous. You bear the taint of the warp. Morty grabbed Rick's arm. Rick, it knows. It knows what happened. Rick didn't look up. His voice was calm, almost gentle. Yeah, and it's about to get over it. He pressed harder, and the glow beneath his skin brightened until it was painful to look at. The machine screamed, not mechanically, but psychically. The walls shuddered, metal crying out as if in agony. Morty fell backward, clutching his head. The voice of the machine deepened, merging with another, a whisper that was not its own. He speaks with the voice of the architect. The spirit trembles. The gate recognizes its maker. Rick froze. Oh no, I'm not your maker. I'm just borrowing the voice. But the manufactorum didn't care. The floor split open, revealing a pit of golden fire that spiraled downward into infinity. The machine spirit was awake, and it believed. Morty screamed as the air filled with a chorus of overlapping voices. Rick, what's happening? Rick backed away slowly, eyes wide. It's worshipping me, Morty. The machine thinks I'm a prophet. The light intensified, bathing everything in unbearable radiance. Faces appeared in the metal, not alive but not dead either. Engineers, priests, adepts of long-forgotten ages. They chanted in binary and blood, their voices uniting into a hymn that shook the walls. Architect of flesh, bearer of change, unseal the gate. Morty's eyes filled with tears. Rick, make it stop! Rick raised the portal gun, its runes blazing like tiny suns.
I'm trying, Morty!
But it's not listening to me. It's listening to him. The pit erupted in a pillar of light, and through it, shapes began to emerge. Wings of fire, masks of shifting gold. A figure that bent reality just by existing. Rick's breath caught. Oh, you've got to be kidding me. It wasn't Tzeentch in full, but an echo, a fragment of will sent through worship and circuitry. It towered above them, both everywhere and nowhere, its voice a whisper threaded through thunder. You built the gate, mortal. Now open it. Rick clenched his jaw. You don't get to tell me what to do. The fragment leaned closer, its eyes infinite spirals of thought. I already have. The portal gun twitched in Rick's hand, the runes blazing uncontrollably. He screamed, fighting against it, but the device turned itself toward the void. The air split, and a wound opened in the fabric of reality. A wind howled from beyond, cold, ancient, alive, and from that darkness, something began to step through. The void screamed as it opened, not like sound, more like memory tearing itself in half. The light pouring through the portal wasn't illumination. It was exposure. It stripped the world bare. Everything mechanical, everything living, every molecule of air was dragged into the raw current of chaos that bled from the wound. Rick fought to stabilize the portal gun, but it was no longer his creation. It was Tzeentch's instrument. The runes carved into his skin burned bright enough to cast shadows. Sparks of psychic energy crawled up his arm, rewriting matter wherever they touched. The Manufactorum's walls groaned, warping into fluid shapes. Metal reshaping into vertebrae, pipes into veins. Morty was caught in the center of the maelstrom. His feet left the floor as the wind rose, his scream devoured by the roar of the warp. He could feel it pressing against his mind, not as words, but as invitation. His fear became visible, threads of light spilling from his chest. Something reached out from the portal, not a hand, but a thought, warm and infinite. Rick lunged forward, trying to reach him. "Morty, don't look at it! Don't feel it!" Morty's eyes were wide, glowing faintly now with the reflection of the storm. "Rick, it's calling me." His voice trembled, but beneath it there was awe. "It knows my name," it says. "It's been waiting." Rick's voice broke through the static. "It lies, Morty." That's what it does. It feeds on attention, but Morty wasn't hearing him anymore. Inside his mind, the voice had shifted, soft, familiar, reassuring. It didn't sound alien now. It sounded like his mother, then his sister, then Rick himself. "You've always been small, Morty," it whispered, wrapping around his thoughts like silk. "Always hiding behind him. But here you're seen. Here you matter." Tears streaked Morty's face. "Rick, it says I can stop being scared." Rick's hand closed around Morty's wrist. "Morty, listen to me. The warp doesn't give you strength. It takes you apart and calls what's left a gift." The light around Morty pulsed. "But maybe I'm tired of being scared, Rick." And then the portal flared, swallowing him. Rick screamed his name, diving into the light, but it was too late. The shockwave threw him back against the Manufactorum's steel pillars, his body cracking against the metal. He slid to the ground, coughing blood. The portal gun clattered beside him, its glow dimming to a dull violet. When he looked up again, the light had faded. The room was quiet. And Morty was standing in the center. His silhouette flickered, edges blurring as if his body couldn't decide on a shape. The air around him shimmered with psychic heat. When he turned, his eyes were no longer human, swirling galaxies of amber and gold, reflecting the same impossible geometry as the eye itself. "Morty," Rick's voice faltered. "Kid, what did you do?" Morty blinked slowly. When he spoke, his voice echoed, not doubled, but layered, carrying the weight of something vast. "I didn't do anything, Rick. I remembered." Rick pushed himself to his feet, half limping, half stumbling toward him. "That's not you talking, Morty. That's it talking through you." Morty tilted his head, almost curious. "Does it matter? If I am the voice, or if it's mine now?" Rick froze. The kid's tone wasn't angry, wasn't monstrous. It was calm, heartbreakingly calm. That scared him more than anything. "Morty, you gotta fight this. You're not..." Morty raised a hand and the air bent around it. The light dimmed, and for a moment the rusted Manufactorum shone like polished gold. The symbols carved into the walls flared to life, reshaping into words Rick almost recognized. "The chosen of the warp shall walk between gods and ghosts." Rick's breath caught. "Oh no, 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 no." He reached for the portal gun, flipping open a panel, fingers shaking. "Don't make me do this, Morty." Morty looked at him with strange serenity. "Why are you always trying to fix everything, Rick? What if this isn't broken?" Rick's voice cracked. "Because I made you. I dragged you into this. You think I'm gonna let some cosmic slot machine take you apart and wear your skin like a badge?" The air trembled. Morty's expression flickered. For a heartbeat, his real self broke through. "Rick, I'm scared." That was all it took. Rick dropped the gun and pulled him into his arms. For a second, it was quiet. No voices, no storm, just breath and heartbeat. Then the light flared again, and Rick felt warmth spreading through his chest. Morty's hands glowed where they touched him. "Morty, what are you doing?" Morty's whisper was soft. "You always said you wanted to understand everything. Maybe this is how." The light consumed them both. When it faded, Rick was alone. Morty was gone. Only a faint sigil burned into the floor where he had stood. An Ouroboros of light, endless and shifting. Rick stared at it, trembling. "Oh God, kid, what have you become?" The walls around him murmured in answer. "Chosen." And far above, in the endless madness of the warp, something ancient smiled. Not cruelly, but like a teacher watching a student finally take the first step. The silence that followed was not peace. It was pressure, the kind that hums behind the bones when something vast and invisible is thinking about you. Rick stood alone in the manufactorum's hollow heart, surrounded by shadows that bent inward, drawn to the faint ember still glowing where Morty had stood. The sigil pulsed like a heartbeat, and with every pulse, the floor trembled. "Morty," he whispered, his voice rasped raw. "You're in there somewhere. You have to be." The runes carved into his arms flickered dimly, synchronizing with the symbol's rhythm. It was responding to him, recognizing him, not as its creator this time, but as its witness. The air shimmered, and for a moment the walls seemed to breathe. Then the light changed. The sigil rose from the floor, not as fire, but as liquid memory. It gathered itself, reshaping into a figure. Small at first, then stabilizing into the form of Morty. His feet hovered inches above the metal, his clothes dissolving into robes of translucent light. His eyes burned with twin spirals of golden violet, reflections of the warp itself. Rick took one shaky step forward. "Morty!" The figure tilted its head, smiling faintly. "Hey, Rick!" The voice was his, but layered, a harmony of the boy he'd raised and something infinitely older. Rick swallowed hard. "Kid, I'm getting you out of this, whatever it takes." Morty shook his head gently. "You can't take me out, Rick. I'm not in anymore." "What the hell does that even mean?" "It means I'm everywhere now." Morty's gaze drifted upward. "I can see the Imperium burning. I can see 1,000 galaxies screaming inside the eye. I can even see Earth, still spinning like it doesn't care what's watching it." Rick clenched his fists. "You're not built for omniscience, Morty. It'll eat you alive." Morty smiled almost sadly. "Maybe, but it's showing me things, Rick. Truths about you, about everything. You thought you were the smartest man in every universe. But even you couldn't see the pattern that connects it all." Rick's voice dropped to a growl. "I didn't want to see the pattern, because once you do, there's no coming back." The room shuddered. The light around Morty pulsed faster, brighter. "You're wrong," he said softly. "You can come back. You just have to stop fighting the change." Rick backed away, shaking his head. No, that's not you talking. That's the warp wearing your skin." Morty's smile faded. "You think I'm possessed? But maybe, Rick. Maybe I'm finally free." Rick's hands trembled. He could feel it now. The psychic field radiating from Morty like a tide. It wasn't violent or cruel. It was curious. It was him, but it carried the scent of something else too. The feathered logic of Tzeentch, the god who whispered in every scientist's ear that curiosity was salvation. The manufactorum began to transform around them. Machinery unfurled like flowers opening to sunlight. Cables slithered along the floor, connecting themselves into vast sigils that spiraled outward from Morty's hovering form. The world was rewriting itself. Morty turned his gaze toward the portal gun on the floor. It rose into the air, drawn by unseen hands, orbiting him like a planet around its star. "You built this to escape everything, Rick. To run from consequences. But what if it's supposed to be something else?" Rick's breath caught. "Morty, don't you touch that gun!" Morty ignored him. His hand reached out, and the runes on the weapon lit with impossible color. "It's not just a door anymore. It's a bridge. Between matter and mind. Between what is and what could be." Rick lunged, trying to grab it, but the air itself pushed him back, a soft wave of force that sent him sprawling. "Stop it, Morty! You don't know what you're doing!" Morty looked at him, eyes filled with an emotion Rick didn't expect. "Pity. You always said knowledge was power. You just never asked what kind." Rick struggled to his feet. "Power kills, Morty. Always. That's the joke. That's why no one wins." Morty's expression softened, but the light behind his eyes only grew. "Then maybe I'm not supposed to win." A sound rose from below them, deep and mournful, like a choir made of thunder. The manufactorum's foundations glowed, revealing veins of molten light coursing beneath. Reality itself began to buckle, unable to contain the pressure. Rick shouted over the roar, "Morty! If you tear another hole in space-time, it's not just this universe that goes down, it's all of them." Morty's voice was calm. "Then maybe they'll finally learn something." The portal gun flared. Space cracked open, revealing a storm of gold and blue beyond. Through it, Rick saw flashes of everything. Terror shrouded in dust, daemon worlds burning, and the Emperor's light flickering like a candle caught in wind. And then he saw Morty. Thousands of Mortys, across infinite timelines, each glowing, each whispering the same phrase. Change is the only constant. Rick fell to his knees, shaking. "Morty, please, you're my grandson." Morty's smile was small, almost human again. "I know, Rick, and that's why I'm doing this." The portal expanded, swallowing the room in light. For a moment, Rick saw nothing but brilliance. Then, within it, Morty's silhouette dissolving into stars. When the light faded, Rick was alone again, lying on the cold floor of the manufactorum. The machines were dead. The silence had returned. The sigil beneath him was gone. Only the portal gun remained, cracked and smoking. Its runes were dark. Rick reached for it with shaking hands, whispering, "You were supposed to be just a kid." From somewhere beyond the veil, faint and echoing like a dream, came Morty's voice. "I still am. Rick, I just finally grew up." The lights died. The warp went quiet. But something in Rick's chest, that faint, traitorous spark of wonder, refused to go out. The quiet that followed Morty's departure wasn't stillness. It was waiting, a kind of hollow breath drawn by the universe itself, as if all of creation had paused to see what Rick would do next. The manufactorum lay in ruins around him, its catwalks twisted into spirals, its holy machines reduced to melted silhouettes. The air still shimmered faintly with psychic residue, gold light woven through the shadows like veins of memory. Rick sat motionless amid the wreckage, back against a fallen column. His hands shook. The taste of ozone still clung to his tongue, and beneath it, a sharper metallic flavor that wasn't blood but change, the kind that doesn't heal, the kind that stays. He looked down at the broken portal gun beside him. It was silent now, its runes dead, but the metal still pulsed faintly when he touched it. Warm, like it remembered what it had been. He could feel Morty in it, the energy, the cadence, the impossible curiosity. "Damn it, kid," he muttered. "You always had to outdo me." The silence didn't answer, but the walls groaned softly, like the echo of laughter. He pushed himself up, every bone protesting. "All right," he rasped. "If I'm still breathing, that means this story isn't over." He stumbled through the collapsed corridors. The manufactorum's architecture had changed since Morty's awakening. Organic curves where straight lines used to be, glyphs glowing faintly on the floor. The warp's fingerprints were everywhere. The air shimmered as if still half liquid, the boundary between matter and thought thin as breath. Rick passed through what used to be an observation platform. Outside, the sky of the Eye of Terror stretched endlessly, painted in colors the human brain shouldn't pass. Yet he could see patterns now. Fractals repeating into infinity, constellations of logic embedded in chaos. Morty's touch had left something behind in him too. He could feel it humming under his skin. He clenched his fists and muttered, "Nope, not happening. I'm not playing Chosen Prophet number 2. The shadows near the far wall shifted. Something stepped out of them. It wore the tattered remnants of gilded armor, the insignia of the Imperium half scorched away. The helm was gone, revealing a face carved from exhaustion and devotion in equal measure. An Astartes, a space marine. His eyes burned faintly red, not from mutation, but from the effort of holding sanity inside this place. Rick raised a brow. "Well, aren't you a long way from your church picnic?" The Marine studied him, voice low and resonant. I felt the tremor, the light, a psychic storm unlike any since the birth of the cicatrix maledictum. "You stand at its center," Rick snorted. "Buddy, I've stood at the center of a lot of disasters." "Doesn't mean I planned them." The Marine stepped closer, towering over him. "The mark of the warp clings to you, and yet I sense resistance. You are not demon, not man. Something between," Rick smirked weakly. "Story of my life." The warrior's gaze flickered to the broken weapon in Rick's hand. "That device, what is it?" Rick hesitated. "A door or a key, depends who's asking. Can it close what was opened?" Rick looked out at the horizon, where the storm of warp light was still slowly collapsing in on itself, folding back into unreality. Somewhere beyond it, he could feel Morty, diffuse, distant, but alive. The connection buzzed faintly in his skull, an echo of thought. "I don't know," Rick said softly, "but I'm gonna find out." The Marine regarded him a long moment, Then pray, stranger. The Emperor's light may yet guide your path, Rick barked a laugh. Yeah, sure. I'll put that right between tequila and quantum mechanics on the list of things that never helped me. The Marine didn't respond. He turned, trudging toward the shattered archway. Outside, the sky flared once more, lightning made of souls dancing through the clouds. Rick watched him go, then crouch beside a fragment of the manufactorum's wall. His reflection in the polished metal was wrong. His eyes glimmered faintly, the same violet hue that had filled Morty's. He touched his temple and whispered, "Kid, if you're hearing this, I'm not done with you yet." For a long moment, nothing. Then faintly, a whisper. So soft it might have been imagined. "You never are, Rick." The lights flickered. Somewhere in the ruins, machinery began to hum again. Not as worship, not as chaos, but as purpose. Rick pocketed the broken portal gun, straightened his coat, and took one last look at the bleeding horizon. "All right, Warp," he muttered, cracking his neck. "Round 2. He walked into the light, and for the first time since entering the Eye, the darkness seemed to follow. The light was dimmer now. The warp storms had quieted, their screaming colors folding inward like embers starved of air. Yet the quiet carried danger of its own. An uneasy calm, the kind that settles only before revelation. Rick walked through it, boots echoing against the metal deck of a derelict space hulk drifting in the void. He had no memory of boarding it. One moment he'd stepped through the collapsing manufactorum gate. The next, he was here, alone, surrounded by silence and shadow. The air reeked of burnt promethium and sanctified oil. Every wall was lined with Gothic arches and the half-melted remains of imperial iconography. Statues of saints watched from the corners, their stone eyes cracked, their prayers long forgotten. Rick tightened his grip on the shattered portal gun. The device pulsed faintly now, its heart beating in rhythm with his own. Somewhere deep inside, beneath layers of broken circuitry and divine interference, Morty's energy flickered, a pulse in the dark, steady and maddeningly alive. "Okay, kid," he muttered, his breath misting in the chill. "You wanted to be everywhere. Let's see if I can narrow that down." He flipped a dial on the gun's frame. The runes flared weakly, projecting faint spectral trails across the deck. Lines of color twisting into infinity, each one a possible Morty, thousands of them, maybe millions, bleeding across the galaxy like veins. Rick's jaw tightened. Yeah, that figures. The shadows shifted at the far end of the corridor. He turned sharply, drawing a sidearm from his belt, an old las pistol modified beyond reason. The air moved slow and deliberate. Then a figure stepped into the weak light. It was human, or close enough, a woman in tattered red robes, her flesh half replaced by machinery. Servo skulls hovered around her shoulders, whispering liturgies in metallic voices. Her eyes glowed pale blue, artificial but aware. "Magos biologis ephaedra," she said, her tone ritualistic. "Servant of the Omnissiah. And you are an anomaly." Rick eyed her warily. "You have no idea." Her mechadendrites clicked, scanning him with beams of blue light. Warp touched, yet uncorrupted. Unrecorded pattern. I detected the psychic tremor that emanated from this sector. "It nearly ruptured the Astronomicon itself," Rick smirked. "Yeah, that was me and the kid. Bit of a rough science fair project." Her expression didn't change, but the servo skulls drew closer, murmuring binary prayers. "Explain," Rick sighed, holstering his weapon. "All right, look, my grandson fell into the warp, made friends with a god, and decided to reinvent reality. I'm here to fix that before he accidentally becomes one of your Emperor's bad dreams." She stared at him. "You speak of heresy with indifference." "I speak of everything with indifference," Rick said. "It's called coping." The Magos tilted her head. "You intend to enter the warp again?" Rick glanced down at the portal gun, its faint violet glow reflecting in his eyes. "Yeah, one last trip." "That would be suicide." Rick shrugged. "So's living. I'm just better at making it interesting." Ephedra stepped closer, studying the weapon. "That device, its construction defies Mechanicus logic. Yet, it hums with resonance not unlike the Golden Throne's output." "How did you—" Rick cut her off. "Trade secret. Now, unless you've got a miracle tucked under those robes, I need power. Enough to punch through the Eye's outer veil and anchor a portal that won't disintegrate halfway through." The Magos hesitated. "Power enough to breach the Imperium would drain an entire Hive city." Rick smirked. "Good thing I'm not asking for permission." He brushed past her, heading for the control dais at the center of the corridor. Her servitors whirred, uncertain whether to stop him. "You'll doom us all," she warned. He didn't look back. "Lady, doom is Tuesday." He reached the dais and slammed the gun into the power conduit. The deck shuddered. Lights flickered. The ship groaned like a creature waking from hibernation. Through the viewport, the void outside began to twist, black stars bleeding into spirals of gold. The Magos cried out, "You're tearing through the Geller field!" Rick didn't answer. His focus was absolute, his voice low, a whisper meant for the storm itself. "Come on, Morty. Give me a signal. Anything." The portal gun flared to life, runes cascading across its surface. For a moment, the ship around him ceased to exist, replaced by endless blue flame and laughter like the sound of turning pages. Then a voice broke through the static. "Rick." Rick froze. "Morty." The light around him shifted, condensing into a shape, a boy's silhouette, glowing faintly gold, flickering between existence and memory. "Rick, you shouldn't be here." Rick's throat tightened. "Yeah, well, welcome to parenting. You mess up, you fix it." Morty's voice was softer now, distant. "I can't go back. I'm not me anymore." Rick stepped closer, his eyes burning. "You're still you, Morty. You're just stuck in the biggest lie the universe ever told. You think being infinite means being free. It doesn't. It just means you've got more chains." Morty's shape flickered. "It's not a lie, Rick. It's all connected. Everything you ever wanted to understand. It's here." "Yeah?" Rick said, voice trembling. "Then tell me what you see." Morty hesitated. "I see you, Rick, every version of you. The one who never saved me. The one who tried. The one who gave up. The one who never came here at all. You can't change what's already changed." Rick gritted his teeth. "Watch me." He slammed a lever forward, flooding the system with power. The deck split, lightning arcing across the walls. The portal guns screamed. The Magos shouted behind him. "You're collapsing the void! Stop!" Rick's grin was feral now. "No, I'm collapsing, Choice." The portal bloomed like a star, its light devouring the room. Morty's figure reached out, expression breaking into something human again. Fear, love, recognition. "Rick!" "Hold on, kid!" Rick shouted, diving into the light. The ship tore apart around him, its prayers drowned in the sound of creation remade. And somewhere beyond the veil, between chaos and cosmos, grandfather and grandson fell through infinity, toward one last chance at being human. The plunge through the portal was not flight, it was dissolution. Every atom of Rick's body came apart and reassembled 1,000 times a second, each time somewhere slightly wrong, slightly unreal, his thoughts scattered across lifetimes. One version of him was screaming, another was laughing. Yet somewhere in the middle, the real Rick, the tired, stubborn one who'd built a portal gun just to spite mortality, held on. Then, with a sound like glass cracking in water, he hit solid ground. The world that greeted him was quiet. Not the shrieking chaos of the warp, not the mechanical hymns of the Imperium, just silence. The sky was a deep, bruised violet, pulsing gently like the skin of some sleeping giant. Beneath his boots stretched an endless plain of white ash, soft and warm as dust. Every horizon curved inward, meeting itself in a great slow loop. Rick pushed himself up, coughing. "Okay, this isn't hell." Yet, a familiar voice spoke behind him. "Not hell, Rick, just after." He turned. Morty stood a few paces away, whole again, or something close to it. His skin shimmered faintly, threaded through with faint lines of light, as if he were only borrowing the shape of flesh. His eyes were no longer galaxies, but they still glowed, calm, deep, eternal. Rick's voice came out rough. "You're a long way from the garage, kid." Morty smiled faintly. "Yeah, I guess we both are." Rick stepped closer, studying him. "So what is this? The warp's halfway house for cosmic screw-ups?" Morty looked down at the ash under his feet. "It's the space between. The place where the warp and the real world cancel each other out. Thought without body, energy without direction." Rick frowned. "A liminal state, great. My least favorite genre." Morty chuckled softly. "You made it here, Rick. That means you weren't supposed to." Story of my life. For a long time they stood there, the only motion the slow ripple of color in the sky. It was almost peaceful, which, for Rick Sanchez, was the most dangerous thing imaginable. Finally, Rick broke the silence. "I didn't come here to watch sunsets, Morty. I came to bring you home." Morty's expression changed, a flicker of sadness, maybe even love. Rick, you can't. I'm not a person anymore. I'm an idea. A thought the warp didn't want to let go of. Rick pointed at him with the portal gun, its frame cracked and bleeding light. Yeah, well, I've turned weirder ideas into solid matter before breakfast. You think you're the first metaphysical concept I've had to drag out of the fire? Morty shook his head slowly. You don't get it, Rick. I am the fire now. The air shimmered, and Rick saw it. Not with his eyes, but with whatever part of him the warp had infected. Morty wasn't standing on the ground at all. His feet hovered just above it, every movement sending ripples through reality. Around him, faint outlines of impossible architecture stretched. Cities built from equations, towers of raw emotion. You're holding it together, Rick murmured, realization dawning. This place, you're stabilizing it. Morty nodded. If I leave, it all collapses. The warp, the materium, everything. They've been bleeding into each other since you opened that first gate. I can hold it closed from here, but only from here. Rick's jaw tightened. That's not a life, Morty. That's a cage. It's better than letting everything burn. Rick took a step closer. You're 15, Morty. You shouldn't be holding the multiverse together with your brain. Morty's voice was soft, almost a whisper. Neither should you. The words hit harder than they should have. Rick looked away. The portal gun flickered in his hand, throwing fractured shadows across his face. You think this makes you some kind of god? He said finally. You think holding it all together means you're winning? Morty smiled sadly. No, Rick, it means I'm finally doing something right. Rick's laugh was hollow. You sound like me. And trust me, kid, that's not a compliment. The ground beneath them began to quake. Cracks of light spread through the ash, leaking blue fire. The air thickened, vibrating with a familiar energy, the hum of the warp stirring awake again. Rick looked around sharply. What's happening? Morty's voice wavered. It's noticing you. You're not supposed to be here, remember? You're a variable that doesn't fit. The warp's trying to rewrite you. Rick's grin returned, crooked, defiant. Good luck. I've been rewriting myself since before this dimension learned to crawl. He raised the portal gun, adjusting the settings manually. I can anchor you, Morty. Split your consciousness. Leave a projection here, but pull your mind back with me. You can live both ways. Morty's eyes widened. That's impossible, Rick winked. That's what makes it fun. He fired. The beam struck Morty square in the chest. For a second, everything froze. The world, the air, even thought itself. Then Morty screamed, and light exploded from him, scattering across the sky like 1,000 suns. Rick staggered backward, shielding his eyes. When the brilliance faded, Morty was gone. Only the faint hum of the portal gun remained, its light now steady, calm. The horizon shimmered, folding back into black. Rick stood alone again, his reflection in the ash staring back at him. He looked down at the gun and whispered, I told you I'd bring you home. He aimed the device at the sky and pulled the trigger. The last portal opened, silent, bright, and endless. Rick stepped through without looking back. The liminal world folded in on itself, its final echo a single word whispered through every layer of reality. Grandpa. Rick emerged into blinding white light, his boots scraped across cracked stone. The ground beneath him fractured, as if he stood on the edge of creation itself. All around, the void churned, galaxies folding, collapsing, blooming anew in bursts of silent flame. Time had no rhythm here. Each heartbeat could have been a century or the last second of existence. He stumbled forward, his coat hung in tatters, his hands trembling. The portal gun smoked faintly in his grip, its cracked casing pulsing with violet light. Somewhere deep within it, Morty's essence shimmered, a faint rhythm, like a heartbeat echoing through eternity. Rick drew a ragged breath. All right, kid, let's see if we made it home. He looked up. The horizon fractured into mirrored fragments, reflections of universes spinning like shards of glass. He saw worlds he recognized. One where Beth never left. One where Summer became a pilot in the Imperial Navy. One where Morty never met him at all. And between them, flickering like static, was this one. The place between stories, where choice still existed. A wind moved across the plain, whispering in a voice that was everywhere and nowhere. Rick! Rick turned sharply. Morty? That you? Or the cosmic aftertaste of my bad decisions again? A shimmer appeared in front of him, resolving slowly into the boy's shape. Faint, translucent, but there. Morty's outline wavered like a reflection on deep water. You shouldn't have come back, Rick, the voice said. Morty's, but layered, older, resonant with the warp's hum. The balance is holding, barely. You pull me out now, everything collapses. Rick's jaw clenched. Kid, I didn't claw through half the damn Eye of Terror just to get lectured by the universe's newest screensaver. You're coming home. Morty looked down at the swirling fractures beneath them. Home's gone, Rick. You burned a hole through reality trying to reach me. This is all that's left of it. Threads, pieces. I'm holding them together, but if I let go, Rick cut him off. Then let it fall. We'll rebuild it. We always rebuild it. Morty shook his head slowly. You don't rebuild what's infinite, Rick. You just get lost in it. The cracks widened. Blue light spilled through them, raw warp energy bleeding into this fragile space. Rick staggered as gravity flickered, the air bending and unbending around him. He could feel the warp watching, patient, curious, waiting to see which of them would blink first. He raised the gun. I can anchor you. I'll drain the energy from this whole plane if I have to. Morty stepped closer, his faint form trembling. You can't. It's part of you now too. You opened the first door. Every portal since then, every jump between universes, it all led here. Rick's hand tightened on the trigger. Don't tell me I built this. Morty's expression softened. Not on purpose, but you did. You always do. Something in Rick broke then. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just a quiet collapse inside the walls he'd spent a lifetime building. He lowered the gun, staring at the boy who was and wasn't his grandson anymore. So what? You stay here forever? Keep the lights on for a universe that doesn't even remember your name? Morty's smile was faint. Someone has to. Rick looked at him for a long time. The sky cracked again. Thunder rolling in the distance like the heartbeat of a dying god. He thought of every time he'd dragged Morty into the fire, every lesson dressed as cruelty, every adventure that ended with guilt. He'd always told himself it was worth it, because the universe didn't care unless you forced it to. Now, for once, he wished it did. He holstered the portal gun. You're stronger than me, kid. Morty tilted his head. No, I just finally believed you. The words hit him harder than any truth the warp could conjure. Rick laughed, a hoarse, broken sound, and wiped his face with a trembling hand. Yeah, figures my biggest success story's the one I can't bring home. The cracks widened one last time. The void beneath flared gold, swallowing the horizon. The light was pure, immense, absolute. Rick turned to it, shielding his eyes. All right, he muttered. Let's make it count. He lifted the portal gun, input a final command, and tossed it toward Morty. The weapon hung suspended in the air, its runes reigniting one by one. Morty looked at it, startled. Rick grinned faintly. Every door needs a guardian. You're it now. Make sure nobody stupid enough comes knocking again. Rick, what about you? He shrugged. Somebody's got to close the door from the other side. Before Morty could protest, Rick slammed his fist against the control chip embedded in his wrist. A cascade of blue fire erupted around him, threads of energy shooting outward, sealing the fractures. The warp howled, furious, hungry, but the light held. Morty reached for him. Rick! Rick looked up one last time. Take care of the multiverse, kid. And if you see a god, tell him he owes me a drink. The light engulfed him. The last thing Morty saw was the flash of a smile. Tired, defiant, unbroken. Then the portal closed. The silence that followed was eternal. The cracks vanished. The plane of ash turned smooth, the sky softening into pale gold. Morty stood alone, the portal gun hovering in his hands, its hum steady, alive. He whispered to the empty air, "You never quit, do you?" Somewhere in the fabric of the warp, faint and fading, came the echo of a laugh. Then finally, the Eye of Terror went still.